Original sound quality was poor, so I'm doing a voiceover on this video. Before I put any of the kit bags into the kayak, I'd already put a deflated standard buoyancy bag into the forward end to make it easier to slide the main bag in without it snagging on the ribs. And the only thing that adds a little bit of difficulty here is getting it past the footrests without getting caught up too much and without it damaging the bag. So that just takes a wee bit of care at this point. And I always try and make sure that the inflation tubes are clear and accessible, although tucked behind the ribs to keep them out of the way. And that leaves a bit of extra space that I can put things like this bag with my walking boots in it. And I could push that down further with my feet once I'm sitting in the kayak. In the after section, I'd already put an extra piece of camping mat. That also gives me spare padding and spare sleeping mat on the campsite. And that just helps to slide the bag in. Now, because of the deck beams, the fully loaded bag won't slide in smoothly all in one. So I get it in as far as I can and then take a few items out to push the bag in that final bit of distance into the rear of the boat. Then I can repack those items, fasten up the zip and push the whole lot down to leave extra space for the final items that go in behind the seat. I use a stick sometimes to help just move the end of the bag over any obstructions in the back end. And that stick's got a rounded end on it so as not to damage the inside of the bag. And then just a bit of extra pushing and shoving to move everything backwards. It's worth remembering though that your food is going to get quite squashed, so it's best to choose the kind of stuff you bring accordingly. Then I squeeze out as much air as I can just to leave enough space for the final items. I'm putting the fuel canister up alongside on the top of the bag, so if there's any leaks then nothing's going to get into the food. If I've got a drinks flask with me, something like a thermos flask, I'll put it in a similar position on the other side. And then finally I can fit in the dry bag with my quick access essentials behind me. Things like lunch, spare clothing, spare hats and that kind of thing. I like to have the pump inside the cockpit to reduce some of the clutter on the deck. I hold it in place around the ribs with a thin piece of shock cord with a wee hook on the end of it. And in all the practice that I've done with bailing out and rescues, I've found I can get access to this perfectly easily and it doesn't cause any problems at all. I'm usually paddling with other people who have their own pumps, and so if there's a rescue to be done, I'll usually use their pump for their boat. But I can get at this quite easily if I just pop the spray deck. Then additional items will fit beside the kit bags nicely in between any gaps left between the bag and the skin. Here on the foredeck I'm putting the compass in place. It's got 4 shock cords with hooks on the end which go around the deck lines and hold it in a good position to be seen, but it's away from any metal items that I'm carrying. I usually put the paddle float behind me, just underneath the deck line, and for extra security I'll just tie one of its own straps or string around the deck lines. The camera mount goes on the foredeck, sitting on the ridge, but held in place by the leather deck straps, and that holds it nice and securely. But I also have lanyards attached to all the main parts of the camera assembly, so in the event of anything coming loose, it always stays attached to the boat. I'll also use short lanyards to hold my maps under the deck lines, again so nothing blows away and I don't lose anything. And the only thing I haven't put in here is the spare paddle, which would, being a Greenland paddle, would just lie along the foredeck and hooks underneath the carrying strap at the forward end and then underneath one of the deck lines that you can see there. I'll just put the ditch bag in between my knees. It's another dry bag containing a few emergency essentials. Again, in all the practice I've done, I've never had any entrapment issues with this at all. There's plenty of room to get out, even if it did stick slightly on my feet. Finally, we made it to Mallaig to start the journey, and for once I was one of the first ones packed, and we had really nice conditions to paddle out to the Knoydart Peninsula. Here we are heading out to Inverary Bay, and we camped not far from the village on a beautiful piece of ground right by the beach. We ended up staying an extra day because the weather was against us. We had very strong winds. It happened to coincide with the 25th anniversary of the Knoydart community buyout of the land. So there were a few extra and fun events going on at the time. So we had a bit of a bonus. So on the foredeck, apart from the empty bottle of beer, I'm trying putting my tow line on the foredeck. Having it here, it's accessible, but it's not in the way of anything. And see, there's my camera bull mount. Everything else is ready. The maps are ready for the trip today. So back aft, I've got all my after stuff in there, all the food and things like that, and a little bit of water underneath this in a water bag, which is clipped in place around a couple of the ribs. And I've got it underneath everything else, so it can't move. So in the event of a capsize, or at least going over, I haven't got a lot of water in a sloppy bag that could move around and cause some stability issues. It's wedged underneath here. Please give the video a thumbs up if you found it valuable. If you'd like to support the channel further, then there's a link in the description. This channel runs on Ko-fi, so that's a lovely way to give me some extra support. Either way, thank you for watching, safe journeys and great adventures.